Hi, welcome to Dazzliest, Learning the Language of Autism. Bell Bear Away. Thank you so much for all the new subscribers. It's been amazing and really appreciate you tuning in, and I really hope that it's helping you and your families and loved ones or people that you work with who are autistic. So the senses, this is a brand new series that I'm going to be starting as of this week. I'm going to try and do a weekly video, but at the moment, because our circumstances have changed, I might only be able to manage to do it once a fortnight. But they will be either once a week or once a fortnight. We'll just see how it flows. So the senses. I'm going to be talking about the senses, all 8 senses. And normally we think, oh, there's only 5, but there isn't, there's 8. And these, my notes are over here, which is why I keep looking down. So obviously we have the smell, the olfactory, the gustatory, which is taste, visual, which is sight, tactile, obviously touch, auditory, which is sound. And then we have the vestibular, which is the vestibular. That's a good word, I like that word. It's the movement of bodies through space. So where you begin and end. Some children find it, people that have got sensory processing disorder have challenges in, they don't quite understand where they are in space. So to try and imagine what that feels like, which could result in toppling over, banging into things, dropping things, not being able to figure out where a cup is to grasp it. So many things. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about proprioception, which is body position within your joint and muscles. So the information from your brain to your joint and muscles. So being able to literally move and bend and grasp and pick up things and find manipulative skills, as well as coordination and all the rest of it. And then there's the last one, which is the interoception, which is the information within your own body. So whether it's from the environment or whether it's within your own body system. So for example, if you touch something, you can't tell whether it's hot or cold. So often, that can cause a lot of problems, especially if children are very young and they are unaware of they might be touching a cooker hob, for example, and their skin is burning and they have no idea, they can't feel it. Same with being cold. If they're in a freezing cold bath, sometimes they can't feel that they're cold, but their body system will be going, oh, cold. Hurting yourself, like stories of children that can, literally bite off their own tongue because they can't feel the pain. But also, some people with this interoception issue is they can't tell whether they're hungry. So they might not eat unless you tell them to eat because they just don't get those usual hunger feelings. Or they could overeat. They could just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat because they can't tell, they don't feel when they're full. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So all these senses can be, overactive, which is called hyperthesia. I'm not going to use these long, complicated words all the time. But that's an overactive, extra sensitive sense, or you've got an underactive sense, which is hypothesia. So it's needs, you can't feel things, or your hearing may be it's not because you're hearing impaired, it's not because you can't hear anything, it's just that you can't hear very well, or you can't hear certain sounds, or if your your taste is, you just don't taste things as strongly as they are, or you could, that you're sensitive, your taste is so sensitive that to eat a piece of orange is, for example, is just, it's just insane. It just, or some people with an underactive taste can eat, a whole clove of raw garlic or a really hot chili and be like, what? And everyone's going, oh my God. Or really hot food, it doesn't burn their mouth, or it might burn their mouth physically, but they don't feel the heat. So it's a very interesting and fascinating condition that affects your whole life. So you don't have to be autistic to have sensory processing disorder. Sensory processing disorder is a condition all on its own. You can have that without being autistic. I don't quite know what the statistics are, but most people who are autistic or diagnosed autistic will have some or all of these sensory processing issues, whether it's under or overactive. Or they might just have some, they may only have one, they might not have all of them. And of course, within this, vestibular and proprioception ones to do with the body and the movement and stuff, you are looking at other conditions such as dyspraxia and dyslexia and all those other subconditions that enable the brain to unjumble numbers or letters and figure stuff out from that perspective too. Sometimes it's not just the physical and the body. Sometimes it can affect the mind and the brain and how it processes information. So it's really important, I think, that we need to spend a lot more time as parents, carers, professionals, focusing on the sensory processing situation of each child, client that you work with. Because once you understand their own system and what their sensory body is doing, then you will know, first of all, you'll understand their behaviour a whole lot more. If you know that a child has, really strong sense of smell and they are really distressed and anxious about walking into a department store. These are examples, okay? We're going to talk about this in a lot more detail each week, each sense. But if there's behaviours, which there are often, where there's banging, hitting themselves, or head banging, or vomiting, or screaming, or fingers on their ears and trying to run away all the time, and it could be that they are sensory overloaded, and that some of these overactive senses can actually hurt, and cause incredible amounts of physical pain and distress. And obviously, if it's underactive, that has its own set of challenges and difficulties and dangers as well. So the first book I ever read about autism, and I didn't know what it was about. I just happened to fall upon this book in a job I had. It was in the staff room years and years and years ago, before I even had George, my son. And I thought it was like a thriller or something because of the cover. Have I got it? Yeah, I will get it out over the next couple of weeks and I'll show you it. But it's called The Ultimate Stranger. And when I saw it, the cover of it and the title, I just thought it was some kind of thriller. So I picked it up and I thought, oh, I like reading. What's this? So I just thought I'd start reading it. and it was written by a doctor, and years ago, like in the 60s, and he was talking about autism, and he was talking about the sensory stuff, which had never been spoken about before. And although now, in hindsight, I don't particularly like the title of the book, I don't like that it's called The Ultimate Stranger. I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable with that title. But I feel lucky, really, that that was the first book I ever picked up, even before I was a mum. I'm a nursery nurse, so I was working in a family support centre, working with families and children of all different disabilities, abilities and genres and all that. And it was fantastic. But because it, straight from the get-go, autism wasn't talked about that much back 25 years ago. And I just loved this book, and I actually took it home and I just kept reading it. I found it really fascinating, and how he was helping parents back in the 60s to, when children were being sent off to mental institutions left, right and centre, and that was the advice that the doctors were giving parents, was like, basically, you need to just let go of your child and accept that they're going to be in an institution for the rest of their lives, because their behaviours were just so extreme, like banging themselves, hitting themselves, rocking, stimming, doing all the things that we today understand far more. But back then, it was just like, that looks insane, so you need to lock them up. And this doctor was kind of like, so he kind of really looked into this. So he was kind of a little bit ahead of his time, I would say, or he was of a time when he was meant to be, but nobody was listening, except obviously for the parents and the children that he was helping, because the lucky ones that did get to see him, and the children that went through his doors, these parents were distressed and terrified that their children were going to be locked up. The children were terribly unhappy and in a lot of pain. And this guy comes along and says, well, it's because your child has got a heightened sense in, auditory or taste or sound. And this is what we can do. We can help reduce that for them. We can change the environment for them so that they can regulate with ease without distress. So you can imagine you can imagine how wonderful that would have been to realise that your child, wasn't some kind of unreachable, human that nobody knew what to do with. It was amazing. I found it very moving. So I will be putting a link to that book throughout my videos, and other information and websites that I've found along the way to help support what I'm saying. There'll be different, support groups, foundations and whatnot that I will put in my descriptions of my videos as we go in the coming weeks. So this video will be 8 weeks, because we're going to talk about each sense, so there'll be 8 of those, and we will then spend time talking about, within each sense, we're going to also talk about what we can do to help your child or person that you care for, a loved one who's autistic or got a sensory processing disorder, that you can help make their environment easier for them to exist. So obviously you can't change the world. You can't go outside and make everybody be quiet and make everybody stand still while your child walks down the street. Of course you can't. But what I've learned with George, our son, is that when he was very, very young and developing and, a baby, and everything was crazy and really challenging for him, by changing the environment for him, some people would say that we were mollycoddling him, some people would say that we were giving him an unrealistic world to live in. Did I listen? No. I didn't listen, because my instinct told me that give this guy a chance. He's a young baby, a young child, and he's obviously very distressed. Why should he have to just be thrown into the Nobody does that. We learn things gradually and easily, and the more we do that and the more we feel confident within our bodies and within our environment, then the more likely we are to interact and, be more engaged. If everything's too much, you're just going to be continuously shutting down the whole time, and I just felt that wouldn't help him move forward or grow or develop in any way. And it seems that it's worked. So I'm going to be talking about that from my perspective and what we felt was right in our family for our son. And I will also be adding into this, as I always do, information given to me by other autistic people. I will not be giving names, I will not be giving where they come from or the source, but I will be throwing in information. So everything that I talk about will be our experiences, what we've learned in our own personal lives, but it will also be information from what other autistic people have told me over the last 15 years, which I have learned from, and I'm just passing that information on to help you. So I'm really excited about this series. It's a really good one. I feel it's the most important thing to learn about an autistic person and people generally. I just think it's, if we start with the sensory stuff and we can understand that, then we understand a whole lot of behaviours, and life can seem much easier for your child and therefore you. I promise you that. Okay, so thank you. I look forward to starting this hopefully next week. Will be the first sense that we'll be talking about. I don't know which one we're going to use. Maybe we will start with, we might as well just start with smell. We'll start with the sense of smell, and we'll talk about it in detail, and we'll talk about how we can help and support your autistic person, child that has this challenge. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in this whole series of senses. It's worth subscribing and clicking the little alarm button so that you'll know when the next video has come straight in your inbox, and then you haven't got to try and remember it in your brain. That will be fantastic. Thank you so much, and please feel free to comment and add your experiences and what you've found out about your own child or your own personal sensory stuff. The more we share, the more we learn, the more we learn, the more we can help others. And across the board, everybody needs to know about this stuff. Thank you, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.